Welcome back to the Sri Lanka magical journey. We left off last time with trusting the calling, trusting the calling of the land. What is that like? How does that show up in your life? Have you experienced it? Did you experience it as a calling or as a knowing? And what did you do about it? Today's episode, which I believe is episode 8. Ooh, how perfect, because this episode is all about the spice of life as generosity. How perfect that it's the number 8 for infinity, infinite abundance. The spice of life, which I'm calling generosity. So we're going to go right into some photos because they're so fun, this particular part. So here, this is actually still on the retreat. So these guests, I answered the calling. The guests that came on the retreat answered their calling. Do you realize that? It's actually viral in a good way. When you answer the calling, it creates a magnetic effect of others answering their calling as well. When you answer a calling and manifest the dream of that calling, others can be called in to that dream because they actually dreamt it up too. So in other words, just as I'm receiving the calling to call people to this land, people in the US were receiving the calling to go somewhere to be nourished at the level of their soul. And all they needed was for me to say, hey, here's what I'm doing. Come with me to Sri Lanka. And they could feel the vibrational fit of that. Also, can you feel how even that whole process of listening to the calling, answering the calling, offering it up, other people answering their calling, it is an unendingly generous unfolding. And that's how how I experienced all of this. And actually, it's how I still experience pretty much every day here in Sri Lanka. Not that we don't have bad days and rough days. You're going to hear some rough stories coming up, really rough stories. Like there was a time period when I think actually being here took about 10 years off mine and Rory's life. But we'll get there. We'll get there later. So here we are at the cinnamon sticks. We went out on a little field trip to see how the cinnamon, where it actually comes from, what it looks like. And it's funny because we thought we were going to go out into this sort of farm where you see sort of neatly planted trees everywhere. But actually it looks just like a jungle. We were walking through the jungle. And let's watch this together. You can see this is part of the process. This is the cinnamon stick itself.
Not in here. He normally does it in his home.
So cool. And the smell, the fragrance from this is just incredible. Here's some of our group members. This was a picture I took as we were walking down the road. I just loved this squatting pose and this contemplative posture. Some pepper. Can you see the pepper in there? Little pepper pieces, pods. This was actually in the Sacred Tooth Temple in Kandy. So beautiful. If you come to Sri Lanka, I highly recommend visiting the Sacred Tooth Temple. The Buddha. Now here, oh, the spice of life being generosity. There's something that I have been eternally blessed by with being in partnership with Rory. And it's this piece about the music. Pretty much wherever we go, he brings an instrument. And he's not shy about just playing and calling other people into play. And every time it creates such an environment of like unending richness. You know, everybody ends up being lifted up. They're full, they're receiving and giving at the same time. And it it unfolds in such a brilliant way that I never could have, like, with my mind, with Tiffany's mind, if I just said, I want this to happen so that this can happen, there's that sort of transactional energy that the mind, when the mind gets disconnected from the heart, that's what it goes into. And music instantly shifts out of that sort of transactional conditioning into this cultivating experience of the heart. And this is what I love so much about Rory and music and traveling with music. So he had the big idea. I think you're going to love this. You know the song Hotel California? Da, 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 Hotel California. So what he did was he took those lyrics and rewrote it to be Hotel Galavilla. And we rewrote the lyrics to reflect all of the beauty of what we had received there from the people, how much we love them, you know, little kind of insider jokes about the different team members there. And then we performed, we sang it to the whole staff on the last night that we were there. And if you could have seen them, they were so, everybody was so happy. I don't have a picture of the staff responding, but if you can imagine it, just pure exponential delight on part of everyone. Then this might have been our last night as well. I'm not quite remembering, but it was towards the end. Galavilla gave us the gift of inviting Candy and dancers to do a show for us, and it was just spectacular. Check this out. I mean, incredible. The movements, the costume, the drums. And this was a little bit of sea before we left. Oh, actually, this is Rory and I going to the eastern side of Sri Lanka, Arugam Bay. I'm going to save that for another episode because that also includes the generosity of essential oils in connecting with people in different places. We'll get